ASEAN and Japan. This discussion is on the relationships between ASEAN and Japan, particularly with emphasis on the transition of the interface. It would clarify certain transitional developments of ASEAN-Japan relations if we revisit important events that had contributed to the crystallization of what ASEAN-Japan relations is what is now. From the point of view of periodical transition, the interest of Japan in what is now ASEAN as a region dates back to the period when Japan is the lone Asian power in comparison and together with Western powers that interacted with Southeast Asia by colonial or through colonial activities and advancement into the region. So we see here that with the European and Western colonial powers, the only Asian that is participating in the colonialization of Southeast Asia is Japan. As a result, most of these interactions are dominated by strategic and military developments and conquest. Moreover, it is a one-way relation from Japan to Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia then is a passive recipient of this colonial advancement of the European powers plus Japan. Well, so in other words, what is now ASEAN-Japan relations has also started and developed with colonial interaction. Then another period that has that determined the formation or development of ASEAN-Japan relations is World War II itself. So this relationship between ASEAN and Southeast Asia would be placed as conqueror-conquered relationship. And the legacy is that it is a victor-victim legacy. So that after the end of World War II, with the conclusion of the San Francisco Treaty in 1952, post-war or post-World War II, ASEAN-Japan relations started with the negotiations on reparations. So this is the reparations wherein Japan had to pay for war damages. In this instance, not all Southeast Asian countries participated in this war reparations negotiations. the Philippines, Indonesia, and Myanmar, at that time it's Burma, had tediously negotiated with Japan for reparations. And this is started a new trend of interaction. It is not a one-way direction relations. It is non-military in nature, and it is characterized still by emotional and trust problems. Then, after the post-war, the immediate post-war reparation, reconciliations, we can see here a further development of relationship between ASEAN and Japan. There is reconciliation between Japan and the aggrieved or the victims of war. And of course, this involves, as mentioned earlier, emotional and non-material dimension of relationship. Indeed, it is very difficult to repair the non-material and non-physical aspect of relationship. The trust building, which is or trust between the two entities, ASEAN and Japan, has been very, very low. Japan took the initiative to repair this gap. And in 1977, then Prime Minister Takeo Fukuda had introduced a concept of new relationship after the war between Japan and the Southeast Asian nations. This is called the kokoro to kokoro no fureai, or the heart-to-heart relationship. This non-economic, non-military, and non-political aspect of developing and advancing interface between ASEAN and Japan has contributed to the continuing exchanges, particularly on the human exchanges between ASEAN and Japan. Oh, by the way, during this immediate 2 or 3 decades after the war, the characteristics of ASEAN-Japan relations has been mostly economic, to the point that Japan had strongly pursued economic relations, neglecting, if you may wish, or leaving the non-economic, especially the socio-cultural relations, still underdeveloped. And this kokoro to kokoro diplomacy of Japan had changed conceptually the situation. The most important milestone in ASEAN-Japan relations was the establishment of the ASEAN as an organization, as a regional entity, through the Bangkok Declaration on August 8, 1967. Prior to the establishment of ASEAN, relationships between the Southeast Asian region and its member countries, not as an organization but as a region, has less delineation. But with the creation of ASEAN, at that time, only 5 members, the original founders of ASEAN, namely Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. The interaction between entities within ASEAN and outside ASEAN has now been clearly structured because of the establishment or the creation of ASEAN as an organic entity. So, with on ASEAN-Japan relations, Japan now has to deal with ASEAN at 2 levels of interaction. The first level is the bilateral relations between Japan and the member nations of the organization. The second level is the interaction between Japan and ASEAN as one entity, as an organic entity. And this had drastically changed not only the structure, but the directions of relationship and interaction. The areas of economic relations, political relations, security relations, and socio-cultural relations had been enhanced by establishment of ASEAN as an interacting entity, as a player. Now, with ASEAN and Japan, the one direction relationship from Japan to ASEAN, which was described in the pre-World War II era, in the wartime era, and even in the immediate post-war era, has also been transformed. Hypothetically, because of ASEAN, with the sovereign member nations, there is a hypothetical equal footing in the relationship. So that with ASEAN-Japan relations and ASEAN member country Japan relations, the resulting interface can be termed as hypothetically on equal footing compared to the pre-ASEAN interaction between these entities and Japan. Then, after the establishment of ASEAN, the relationship between outside entities, not only Japan, but other powers like the United States, China, Russia, the EU, Australia, and New Zealand, India, among others, had been clarified through the relationship under the so-called partnership or dialogue partnership relationship. ASEAN now has regular ASEAN-Japan dialogue partnership, ASEAN-US dialogue partnership, etc. So from the hypothetical equal footing, we now have a more developed and institutionalized interaction between ASEAN and its dialogue partners. Regarding Japan and ASEAN, Japan is one of the early countries, or one of the countries that had established the dialogue partnership with ASEAN. And through this, the venue, the channels, and the structures of interaction between the two entities had also changed and is in fact transforming and evolving. Post-ASEAN relations with Japan, now we have a scenario, or we have a situation wherein, unlike in pre-ASEAN and pre-war times, Japan is one of the major players interacting with ASEAN, but not alone. The emergence of other Asian powers has also changed the direction of ASEAN-Japan relationship. And we refer here to China, the rise of China, the rise of South Korea, of India, and other countries in Asia. Of course, the Western countries had also tremendous influence in this interaction and dialogue with ASEAN. So Japan now has competitors, political, economic, security, and socio-cultural relationships and cooperation. But Japan, having had earlier or established earlier relationships with the individual countries of ASEAN and with ASEAN, has some advantages in terms of stability and regularity of interaction. We see here that Japan, with ASEAN and the ASEAN members, had great influence and contribution in enriching the ASEAN-Japan relationship through human resources, through development, through technology, and economic cooperation. But in recent years, or in the immediate recent time, the economic, the technological, human resources, and scientific cooperation between ASEAN and Japan had also expanded into other areas of cooperation. And this includes security and human resources or human security cooperation. Here, Japan is playing a great role, especially in the development of cooperation between ASEAN and Japan in specifically disaster and other disaster mitigation, and other natural calamities. This includes cooperation in development of advanced healthcare or safety and other related areas. Post-ASEAN Japan relations has become multi-pillar interactions: economics, politics, security, and culture, as mentioned earlier. These interactions has been the result of the refinement of previous interactions that were, well, as explained in the pre-war era, it is military-oriented, and in the immediate post-war, it was dominantly economic and material-oriented interactions. But this emergence of multi-pillar or multi-dimensional relationship includes the balancing of the flow of the interface. There is indeed a need to balance economic flow, political flow, human resources flow, and security flow between ASEAN and Japan. A lopsided relationship would not be mutually beneficial to both. And this is part and parcel of the concerns and issues of developing further ASEAN-Japan relations comprehensively. Japan also in relations with, or in competition, if you may, with other Asian players and non-Asian players, has been strongly promoting ASEAN-Japan relations. The kokoro to kokoro diplomacy, which I explained earlier, is one, and the more recent is the so-called EPA, or Economic Partnership Agreements. Many of the major member countries of ASEAN had forged EPA, or Economic Partnership Agreement. And this is a new development in terms of, or in comparison with past economic relations between ASEAN and Japan. The economic partnership agreements between ASEAN as one and between the ASEAN members and Japan can be considered as a gear shift from previous interaction, structurally and in terms of the content. I would say that this EPA, the Economic Partnership Agreement, of course, depending on the negotiated provisions between Japan and the member countries, provides a humanizing factor or element in the exchanges, two-way exchanges between ASEAN and Japan. And the flow of human entities. Here, particularly, we refer to the opening of Japan to ASEAN, not only their natural resources, their products, industrial products, and material resources, but also human resources. And because of this EPA, now citizens of ASEAN countries are allowed, or Japan has opened its door, although how wide is the opening, it still remains to be seen. But in actual practice, there are now, for example, ASEAN healthcare givers, technicians, and professionals are being part of the flow of exchange between ASEAN and Japan through the EPA, the Economic Partnership Agreement. The relevance of this is that there is a change in structure, in content, and even in the concept of cooperation between ASEAN and Japan. In terms of nation building in ASEAN and in Japan, this ASEAN-Japan partnership is seen as a great contributor to nation building, especially in human resources development, in technology development, and other areas. Japan's experience, its resources in terms of natural resources utilization, human resources development, particularly on technology and nation building. These terms of interaction are concepts which could be captured in what Japan called the monozukuri, meaning it is the development of natural resources or goods in the best and in the most efficient and economical way. Cooperation between ASEAN and Japan in this monozukuri is broadening, as seen by the cooperation between Japan and ASEAN, not only in the government level but also in the private sector level for monozukuri. Another concept that is related to this is human resources development, and what they in Japan termed as hitozukuri. The maximum development of human resources for economic, social, and even individual development. In Japan, through educational exchanges, provision of scholarships, and training programs for ASEAN human resources is advancing. And we can say that Japan had played a role in ASEAN human resources development very well and very, very efficiently, if you may wish. So this monozukuri and hitozukuri, creation of goods and the creation of human resources, leads to nation building or konizukuri. country and nation building. So at this stage, we can see that the transformation of interaction or the interface of relationship between Japan has changed in essence, in character, from pre-World War II colonial relationship to wartime conquest and aggressive or conquest victor-victim relationship to the stage or the phase wherein there is repairing or changing the relationship from one-way traffic to a two-way traffic relationship, as started from the Kokoro to Kokoro diplomacy. And with the establishment of ASEAN, this has further been enhanced and transformed, that at two levels, ASEAN and Japan are forging cooperative efforts in economic, political, security, and socio-cultural interface. Prominent in this is the partnership between ASEAN and Japan. That is the channel, or that is the basis of broadened and deepened cooperation in all areas of public and private undertakings. The broadened area of involvement of Japan are seen in the areas of disaster mitigation, health care development, peace promotion in member countries of ASEAN, scientific and educational cooperation, and others. In all these areas, Japan, among other partners of ASEAN, is still providing major contributions for this. And this augurs well for the mutual development and further elevation of ASEAN-Japan relations in the future to come. So finally, ASEAN-Japan relations is faced with opportunities in the area of economic, political, security, and socio-cultural cooperation. Through the mechanism of ASEAN-Japan relations and ASEAN member country Japan bilateral relations, this cooperation is expected to develop further.